Hello, my friends. You know what? I decided to bring you along while I am making this pumpkin leek soup. My daughter made it and she sent me the recipe. It is so good. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to show you guys how she made it and how I'm making it for really no cost to me, because most of the items I either have here or were given to me. All right, so first thing I did, and I didn't even think to bring you guys along with me, was I took one of the pumpkins that I gleaned out of the garden when I helped clean it up, where I received tomatoes and peppers and the pumpkins, and I always scrub the outside. I cut it in half, took out the seeds, stuck it in my toaster oven on bake 375 for about an hour and 15 minutes. I then was able to get all of the puree. This is half of it. And therefore, I have my pumpkin for soup. Now, what I did after that was my neighbor gave me, I think, about 6 leeks. And there's not enough for the entire recipe, so I'm cutting it in half. I have about a pound of leeks in here that I cleaned and chopped very well. I sauteed those in a little bit of avocado oil because that's what I have on hand. The recipe actually says to saute in butter, but I'm trying to cut calories and add some other healthier fats. So I just used about a tablespoon of avocado oil. That's the only thing I've added right now. Beside that, I sauteed the leeks, I added the pumpkin, then I added 3 bouillon cubes. It calls for 3 cups of chicken broth. I'm going to be making some. I don't normally buy it in a container, but I do keep these just in case. 3 of those and 3 cups of water. Like I said, this is about a half of a recipe. So that's what I have in here right now. The leeks, sauteed in a little bit of oil. The pumpkin, I added more. My daughter recommended it, more than what the recipe called for. For the entire recipe, it calls for 1 can, which is roughly 2 cups. I added, I think I had about a little over a cup and a half once I saved out what I need for my other recipe. So add more pumpkin if you really like the pumpkin flavor. Regular recipe calls for 1 can. If you make the entire recipe, my daughter recommended you put as much as you can, maybe 2 cans. All right. So then the rest of this, I have either here in my pantry, or I went and got it out of the garden. So for part of the recipe, and let me show you, my apple doesn't look so great because we've gotten a couple of hard frost and heavy freezes, but I do everything organic here. I do not spray my trees. I just pick off the good apples. So I'm going to peel this and I'm going to chop it, and the best parts are going in the soup. It calls for 1 apple for the entire recipe, so I should be able to get at least 1 apple's worth out of this. Now from my garden, I have some sage. It tells you for a teaspoon and a half of chopped, it says, I believe, freshly chopped sage, and some thyme. These both came from my garden. If you don't grow it and you have it in your pantry, use half. So about 3/4 of a teaspoon each if it's the dried stuff, because you're going to need less. The other thing I need is a little bit of ground cumin. It says cayenne powder, but I don't have cayenne powder, but I do have crushed red peppers, and I'm getting low on those. By the way, cumin is expensive at Walmart. This was $1.25 at the Dollar Tree, which I'm going to get more crushed red pepper from. Oh, I forgot. I'm sorry. I did add 2 cloves of crushed chopped garlic into my soup mix. That could be added at any time. So when I sauteed the leeks, right after I added 2 cloves of garlic. And then you're going to need salt and pepper. And later, I need to get some maple syrup. It does call for a little bit of maple syrup, which I happen to have the real stuff here because, as you might have seen in my one of my past videos, I should say, is I harvest my own maple syrup every couple years. So let me get these things chopped up and we'll get them into the soup pot. Okay, I peeled up my apple real quick. You can see I only have one spot on the entire apple. Even though I don't spray them, I think because I have 8 apple trees that I don't get as many bugs on all of the apples. I'm going to chop up my apples, probably more than it calls for because it only said 1, but that's okay. It's going to add a little sweetness to the soup. Now this is something that's odd for me because I love pumpkin with cinnamon and ginger and things like that in it, and this recipe doesn't call for any of that. So it's a totally different take than, say, a pumpkin pie type thing. All right, so I'm going to throw my apple in there and just stir this real quick because it's bubbling up. I have it on simmer, but it's pretty hot. Okay, my apple's in there. I'm going to chop up. I did go to my refrigerator and I found my maple syrup. This is what I have left in this jar. I think I'm just going to put what's in there. There's probably a little over 2 tablespoons in there. I'm going to add that to my soup. And that's going to be what it gets because I'm not going to open a new jar just for that. I'm going to chop up some of my sage. Nice thing is my bunny rabbit likes sage, so she'll get the extras. I'm not worried about how fine I'm chopping this because I am going to put it in my my stick blender. I'm going to use that to chop them up after I'm done here. I mean, puree the soup up a bit. So that's a good amount of sage there. And my thyme, I'm just going to rip some leaves off here. You hold it at one end. These are mostly at the tips, this one. But if you hold it at one end, let me get that out of the way, and pull down, it comes off pretty easy. That should be more than enough there for my soup. I'm going to give it a rough chop. And then I'm going to add in some, I'm going to hold off on the salt until I can taste it because the bouillon had some salt in it. I think it calls for low sodium. I don't remember the recipe. Anyway, I'll link that in the description box for sure. There is my thyme. And it says to save a little bit for garnish. So if I want to, I can have that. I'm going to add some my crushed peppers to it. Get back over here. Look at how pretty that is. I'm not a huge squash eater, but I'm telling you, this is really good. Some pepper, I'm going to put some fresh cracked pepper in there. If you have it, I would probably use white pepper simply because it will not show in your soup. And I'm going to add some, I don't like it real spicy, but I'm going to add, that's a little bit much, some crushed red pepper flakes. And my cumin, which I haven't opened yet. Oh, I did open it. I must have used it for something. I'm going to add some cumin. It calls for half a teaspoon. That's probably a little bit more, but that's okay. Now it's just a matter of letting this come together. I am going to make one more substitution. I do not have any heavy cream here. I simply don't use it right now, but I do have some light sour cream. I don't think it's going to change the taste all that much. I can add a little bit of that at the end to bring in a little richness to my soup. I'm going to simmer this together, and once it's done, I'm going to get my stick blender out. I've got to get the apples nice and tender. Want the leeks really super tender, and that is a pretty easy way to make soup. All right, here is my soup. I cooked it until the apple was nice and tender, and it's very, very thick. So there's a good possibility I'm going to have to add some water to this. I did add quite a bit of salt to this, and to me it was still missing something. I wanted a little kick to the flavor, and I figured it out. The one thing the recipe did not call for that I added was some I just grated up some fresh ginger into my soup. And I think that really added a little something to it. I'm not a huge ginger fan. I don't like it, pungent, that kicks you in the face. But it just added that. It brightened up the soup a little bit. Well, I'm going to go ahead and puree this and see if it needs any more water. And I'll do that off camera so you don't have to listen to it. All right, you guys, here's my soup after it's all been pureed. And it is so good. If you like pumpkin and you don't want a sweet pumpkin dessert type thing, you just want some really good pumpkin flavor, this pumpkin leek soup is really, really good. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Is this something you might try? It certainly was worth a try for me. Well, anyway, you guys have a wonderful day, and I'm going to go enjoy a bowl of soup.